All right, first rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be after waivers for what, week 6 at this rate. This is going to be the proactive waiver wire channel or show when we're trying to get guys a week ahead of when they spike, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So week 7 buys, I have written down the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. Let's see, week 7 Ds that I would be going after if you're going to be chasing your defenses right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Bengals, and it's going to be like Joe Flacco, it looks like at this point. I still probably would be going after that. Joe Flacco is a little bit of a sack magnet and a turnover machine. That's all we want. But remember, never trust Thursday night football out there. And I'm going to scroll down. Patriots are going against the Titans right now, so like I would be going after them. And then again, I don't know what's available in your league. The Chiefs defense going up against the Raiders. The Raiders are going to be going one of those I want. The main one that I would probably be looking at if I have available, that I could look at again because never trust Thursday night football would be the Broncos going up against Jackson Dart, the rookie for the Giants. That would probably be the main one that I would feel best rolling at this point. I did take a couple of them off because like I just don't know how much I really want to be chasing the Saints anymore. I'm sure they're going to burn me when it comes after that. And then like the Dolphins are very good against the rookie for the Browns at this point. So I don't know how much I really want to be chasing that one either. All right, I don't think I have a lot of stuff to go after now. I'm probably going to rant a little bit at certain points in this video. I did get home a little bit earlier than I thought I was, so I'll just get this out of the way. And then first and foremost with the 49ers, surprise victory against the Rams on Thursday night. And again, I'll just repeat this over and over again. Never trust Thursday night football, right? So with Brock Purdy right now, and I went and looked it up today because I did see yesterday that supposedly he was supposed to play, but then I did see yesterday also that he didn't practice Monday. So I went and tried to hunt this down and I couldn't find any of this. And then I then went and looked up further, and then I did see that the coach came out Friday and said that there's no timeline for Brock Purdy. So like your guess is going to be as good as mine when it comes to that one. And I did see that Mac Jones did practice, and then there's no quarterback controversy, whatever. Probably doesn't matter for us from a fantasy football perspective at this point. Who I would want and who I would be rolling and what's going on with the toys on that one. First and foremost, I'm going to talk a little bit about Kyle Juszczyk as this goes on this video today. 42% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity. That's like the long and short of that when it comes to overall running back usage that I find interesting. Right now, Slick Rick, last I saw, not seen on Monday's practice, so I did see some of this yesterday. I'm just not making it up when I was writing down my notes. So no Slick Rick. I think they can wait on him a little bit longer because of Kendrick Bourne at this point, and that would be the main thing that I would talk about. Like Jennings is supposed to be out or available this week. It says like suits up for Monday's practice. And again, I think I talked about this yesterday in Chasing the Dragon with Jennings is going to play the X. Kendrick Bourne's probably going to play that Z. That would be what like Slick Rick would run. So you're looking at 81% snaps, 11 for 10, 142. Watched the tape. Wasn't super impressed by anything by him, but he was just the guy that they were funneling everything to. So again, there was crossing routes and it was, like zone beaters and stuff like that. It wasn't anything that I was like really interested in. Demarcus Robinson was at 85% snaps. He did have a red zone opportunity in this one. And I watched the tape because I want to see where Bourne was playing, and you're looking at like slot work, stuff like that. So it did look like he was probably playing more of the Z. And then where is he at? Demarcus Robinson, he was at 85% snaps, 7 for 3 for 39. This one did have a red zone opportunity. MVS was at 53% snaps. They did run a little bit more two tight ends than like they normally do, like 44% snaps for Luke Farrell. That's why I was talking about like Juice to start things off. Like what are they running? Like two tights, three tights, 21 personnel with two running backs out there overall. And then your Jake Tonks. Now, I will talk about this, that I tend to shoot for upside on guys. So like if you want to take your 40-degree day and go home, I can understand that because that was in the cards. Vacated targets tend to go first to running backs, and Christian McCaffrey is the number 1 wide receiver when it comes to the 49ers. Number 2, vacated targets tend to go to tight ends, and there you go. Bob's your uncle when it comes to 11 for 7 for 41 and a touchdown. And I want to scroll down here. 2 red zone opportunities, and he tugged on him. So, like, if you're chasing that guy, because you missed out on, like, your Darren Wallers or something like that. There's other tight ends we're going to talk about that I would feel better about spending my capital on a week-to-week basis than trying to catch more lightning in a bottle before George Kittle comes back. If I'm trying to win my league and I'm trying to find a guy that will give me a disproportionate advantage relative to my opponent on a week-to-week basis. I don't know. But if you're in a deep enough league that you have to be chasing after some type of tight end streamer, yeah, There he comes. There we go. Bears were on bye. The only thing that I was looking at yesterday is any news on Colston Loveland takes part in Tuesday's practice. That was 7 days ago. So I did go look on this. I haven't seen anything on Colston Loveland. We're probably not going to find anything out about him. And until tomorrow with the practice, with the injury reports for practice come out. Now, I will talk a little bit about this, that like with our, where's it? Our Luther, where's he at? Luther Burden shares, the expectation that he was going to go up in snap share before the bye week with Colston out. That didn't occur. So why this is important for Colston Loveland is even when he comes back, I imagine that the overall snap share for everybody is not going to change. And we're going to still expect that, like, if there's anybody that's going to get eaten into, it's going to be Oldemine, Zach Isaias, whatever his name is. That would be the main guy that maybe we could talk about is going to get his snap share eaten into. And you can see, like, 45, 44, 58, 60. If there's going to be a guy that's going to be like, disproportionately affected in this case, it would be him. But I could also see that, like, their snap shares just all remain the same with Colston Loveland. And if they're running Cole Kmet at like 90 to 100% snaps, it don't matter right now with that offense going on. And then we also are already tracking on the possibility that you're going to get like league winner Rome. So what do you think you're actually going to get out of Colston Loveland at this point? Like I saw some of the fantasy football gods talking about, like, picking up Colston Loveland and stashing him coming out of the bye. I just don't see it at this point. And there are probably guys that I would be wanting to buy the snake oil of based off of last week than trying to chase this for theoretically league winning land down the line. That's how I would see that if you're wondering about any of that. When we go down, Bengals. So first and foremost, we'll just go to the Bengals, get the elephant out of the room with Joe Flacco getting traded to. Gotta go to the Browns, I guess, on this one. So Joe Flacco gets traded to the Bengals to start things off. And remember, one of the things, I'll back this up and talk about. Where's he at? Jake Browning for the Bengals. Now, from a fantasy football perspective, we don't necessarily care. If the guy is good or bad at football, we just care about what he does for our lineup. So again, you got your tug from T. Higgins, and you had like a spike week from Jamar Chase. Now, I did see the question about like what to do with Jamar Chase. Like, obviously Joe Burrow coming, or not Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco coming to the Bengals can't be worse than what Jay Browning did for a couple weeks that he was in there. So you're going to get a little bit of a gunslinger. He's also a sack magnet. I don't necessarily know if this like super upgrades the offense, other than like maybe you're going to get like 3 touchdown passes for Joe Flacco, and you're also going to get 3 interceptions. For us, it doesn't matter. As long as you're getting the points that you expect to get out of your toys and the guys that are rolling out there. When it comes down to that, the Bengals offensive line, the main thing is like they just may be bad enough that it doesn't matter who's back there. And I mean this because there's a reason why Joe Burrow is on the shelf right now. So like that's how I would view all that stuff. So last week you did see a little bit of a blowout. Let's go over to here when it comes to the Bengals and the Lions, and it was like actually a blowout. And then Jake Browning like led them back primarily because Jamar Chase and stuff. And so the snap share, 53% snap for Chase Brown. Like that's a little bit misleading because you got a lot more Samaje Perine because they were like so far behind that they were throwing to get back in the game. You see 47% snaps. And this one overall did get a red zone opportunity in this game for Perine. So if you're wondering about your Chase Brown, like, if you want to know like what my thoughts are, and I do have Chase Brown in one of my leagues, is you're probably not going to get much more for than a bag of chips from your Chase Brown. So again, this is one of those things like the question about like what to do with Jamar Chase or your Chase Brown, especially with like Joe Flacco coming in. They may have slightly more value to trade right now. Or you can also like try and pretend that like things will turn around with Joe Flacco. Again, these are one of those things like when you're wrong, and the best thing to do is do a bad trade, get what you can for them. That means like not maximizing what you think the value is, just like moving on to something else. And a lot of your less competitive leagues, guys in your leagues will not actually understand. And you can look, I'll go to Joe Flacco so you can stare at Joe Flacco instead of that guy. A lot of the guys in your less competitive leagues, and I'm talking like, probably most of the leagues that we're in, even if they are higher stakes leagues, and we can define what like higher stakes is, whatever we want to define it as. A lot of people will not value guys correctly because they want name brand guys versus like the right guys. And we can talk about like Abuka right now. We could argue about like, well, how value Abuka is relative to like other guys that are out there. So you could make that honest conversation that prior to this last week, that like Abuka was worth more than Jamar Chase. Now, because of the Joe Flacco trade, you could argue that like Abuka and like Jamar Chase are the same guy. And it is not a real conversation for those out there in the ether, the cheap seats that are listening. That's not what I'm discussing in this case. What I'm saying are what are they really the same value? That's not what we're saying. It's if you're trying to do a trade with these guys, you got to realize like the guys that you're going up against may look at Abuka one way and they may look at Jamar Chase. Some guys may be wanting to get buy low on Jamar Chase. Some guys may be wanting to sell and get whatever he can out of them. And again, the same conversation could be with Abuka. But some people in some of your leagues may go like, well, he hasn't done this for year in and year out like Jamar Chase, and I will never value him the same way as Jamar Chase. Or vice versa, you may get other people that are like, this is going to be this year's like Puka from a couple of years ago. Like, I will overvalue this guy relative to like, the conversation about like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and all that stuff going on with Jalen McMillan potentially coming back. You may get like some snob that like says this guy is worth like the number one wide receiver in all fantasy football relative to what Jamar Chase did last year. And it could be the other way. So again, sometimes if you really want to pull the trigger on your trades, you have to be willing to lose the trade in order to fix your lineup and go forward. And I will talk about this when I get to Bill and Rico Dowdle, because I made a bad trade to start my season off which was ETN and Diggs for Golden. And it turned out I actually won the trade when it came to the win column, because I would not have rolled certain guys, especially this week with the spike weeks, to get what I got if I had other guys in my lineup that didn't have the upside. And again, that's part of what fantasy football is getting the upside, getting those massive spike weeks where like it doesn't matter how many 40-degree days your opponent gets, you are going to be able to win because you have the higher overall upside. And we'll talk about like that with your Jamar Chase. Why a guy like Jamar Chase is so valuable, and again, this changes my mind on year-to-year basis. There are very few guys that can go out there and roll like 29 and 26 points. Now, I'll just move on because I'm ranting, and you guys can listen to it if you're really interested, or you can just move on to the next team. I walked into this week's game with Rico and Darren Waller and Bill putting up all the points in my lineup. And if my opponent, who the last guy he had available on Sunday Night Football was Josh Allen, put up 38 points, I lose. Now, I bring this up because as I was talking to my co-manager about it, week 1 against Baltimore, Josh Allen put up 38 points. Now, your scoring settings and my scoring settings may be a little bit different, but again, like it was within the realms of possibility because of how valuable certain guys are relative to their ceilings that Josh Allen could have done that against me on Sunday night, and we would have lost despite putting up the most points in the league because of the guys that we rolled out there for upside, specifically for upside, knowing that rolling Bill was the possibility that we're going to get like a sub 40-degree day, but we also knew that the spike week was coming, so we rolled him, and that's what we got. So that is my thought process on some of these guys that are out there that like you already knew when you bought Jamar Chase that you were going to get sub 40-degree days. That's what he's always done. You're buying the spike weeks, and if you think that you're not going to get enough spike weeks to win you a chip, then yeah, you should sell him for what you can get and move on, right? If you think that you're going to get the spike weeks and they're going to be in the right weeks to win you a chip, then he's very difficult to ever trade because there's so few guys that are going to give you the opportunity to score like 50 points in a week, like I think he did last year at a certain point, if I remember correctly. Yeah, right there, like 49.9 points in week 10. That's what you're buying with some of these players. So that would be my thought process behind it. So yeah, the Joe Flacco trade probably at this point, like at least gives you the opportunity to see light at the end of your tunnel if you want to be holding on to your Chase Browns and your T Higgins and your Jamar Chases. It also may give you the little bit of leverage you need to move these guys to give you the value that you think that they're worth Even though you just don't want to ride the train anymore. That would be my thought process behind all that. The other thing to talk about, I'll talk with the Bengals, going back to this one, is with all the stuff that's going on, you get like 87% snaps, 7 for 5 for 82 with Yosivas. This becomes a little bit more interesting in your deeper leagues because now we're back to Yosivas being in that like wide receiver 3 dart throw range on a week-to-week basis, especially if Joe Flacco goes full gunslinger with the Bengals. I don't think it's going to happen because I think the offensive line is so bad. That would be my idea behind that, and I did have that Noah Fant was out for the so that must have been left in from last week. So let me just remove that from my notes real quick. All right, moving on to the Bills, and they lost on Sunday night against the Patriots. Let's see. Don't have a lot to say about like James Cook and Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. Their all usage was consistent with what we've seen before. So like just some guys are going to be like that when it comes to James Cook. If you're wondering about your shares, wide receivers were all over the place for the Bills. Khalil Shakur was at 63% snaps, 9 for 3 for 45 in this game. 3 red zone opportunities. Samuel and Coleman tugged on their lone red zone overall. Coleman was at 62% snaps. I did see that he did have some disciplinary stuff going on with him. And then Josh Palmer was up to 51% snaps in this game. And again, like Curtis Samuel was up to 49% snaps overall. So like if you're trying to guess on these guys, and I think as we've talked about before, like outside of maybe trying to catch a high upside spike week from like any of these wide receivers, like Khalil Shakur is probably a 40-degree day. And then the rest of them are just going to be high upside spike weeks if you're just gambling, especially in matchups that are out there right now. So that would potentially even move Curtis Samuel into that range if the snap share continues to go up. Again, Elijah Moore was a healthy scratch. And then Dalton Kincaid, like, yeah, we're getting back up to talk about like league winner, throwing around more of those league winners out there. So 54% snaps, which is relatively consistent with what he's done all year. 6 for 6 for 108 in this game. And then because of the game flow, and this was a little bit closer game, you get Jackson Haas down to 29% snaps. He's the blocking tight end at this point. And then Dawson stays consistent at 56% snaps, or relatively consistent overall. So, if Dalton Kincaid is basically like the guy because he's the tight end, and tight ends can't break your heart, all they can do is win your league. Like, so hopefully you went out and you got him already. All right. Broncos, they won a relatively close game against the Eagles. I mean, it was a close game. What are you talking about? So Dobbins, 53% snaps in this game. Overall, all the red zone went to him. That's the long and short of that. And again, because it was a closer game, Beatty was up to 26% snaps. So if you're chasing that theoretical upside of RJ Harvey, down to 20% snaps in this game. So that's how it goes. Nothing on any of the wide receivers. And now that I'm looking at my notes, I want to go look at Pat Bryant. 54% snaps for Pat Bryant. That's a little interesting, even though no targets overall. Evan Ingram in the game, I did write this down. Only 41% snaps, 6 for 4 for 33 and a touchdown. It was a red zone touchdown. So like if you're in that range of chasing potential upside tight ends on a week-to-week basis, like if they get into particular scripts and he's going to be the guy on that week, like you could look at that overall. Lucas Kroll did go on IR with the foot, like that's just an interesting guy that I would like to see put the possibility of him winning the job there, but I don't think it'll ever happen. Browns in that London game, you start off with Dylan Gabriel, 19 to 33, 192 touchdowns. 2 for 5 on the ground. I didn't watch any of his stuff because it's just not relevant at this point. It's a London game, so like that's just a variable that doesn't necessarily matter. Well, I did watch some of the tape. He's exactly what I think he is. Like I think he's good at football. I don't think he'll ever be like great. I think he is a solid guy. There just wasn't much to look at overall when it comes down to it. Now, running back room, you're looking at. I'll start off with Dylan Sampson, 10% snaps. Jerome Ford in this one, he was at 37% snaps. I didn't write. Ford had 2 red zone opportunities in this one, and then Judkins. Right there. Judkins, he was at 56% snaps. 7 red zone went to him. So like 56% snaps, 23 attempts, 110, 2 for 1 for 18, 7 red zone. Yeah, doesn't matter about snap share. Sometimes it just matters about like what they're getting overall. I did talk about this in Chasing the Dragon. Where's he at? Isaiah Bond, 57% snaps, 7 for 2 for 29, 93 air, 2 red zone opportunities. So yeah, if any of this stays consistent down the line, like you're gonna get a spike week out of it. So something probably like better than a 40-degree day with a little like cherry on top. You're probably gonna get like 20 points or something like that if it all lands on the same week. Thrash did stay consistent with what I thought he was going to do, like 40% snaps. I thought he was going to go up to like 60% snaps in the game. It doesn't matter. And part of the reason why I talk about this is they're running 2 tight ends. 96% snaps in the Joku. 3 red zone went to him. He tugged on 1. And then Fannin was at 79% snaps. It was relatively consistent, 4 for 4 for 13, and a red zone tug on that one. All right. Moving on to the Buccaneers. And this was like a barn burner with Seattle in this game with Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, like 2 cast-offs because the coaches in the NFL are horrible, and now they're like really good at football magically out of nowhere, right? So Bucky Irving supposedly is going to miss another week right now. That's what's being tracked on. If you're into that type of thing, Rachaad White 80% snaps, basically full bell cow. Let's see, where is he at in my notes? 4 red zone carries, 1 red zone target in this one for him. And then Sean Tucker, as long as Bucky's out, or if Rachaad White gets injured or something like that, like Sean Tucker should be stashed probably in most of your leagues. 21% snaps, 1 red zone carry, 1 red zone target in this one. So like you can tell the story with owning Sean Tucker in your deeper leagues that you're injury away from getting the possibility of a Rico Dowdle type outcome, at least for a week when it comes to the overall backfield share. And then I believe Josh Williams did 3% snaps overall in the game. All right. Moving on to the wide receivers, I'm just don't have anything to say about Ibuka. There's nothing to say about that. Hopefully you listen to everybody and drafted him in all your leagues. Everybody that listens to this channel, hopefully you have Ibuka. You went up and you got him early. Godwin was at 77% snaps in this game, 4 for 3 for 26. So again, like there's nothing to track on that. There's no air yards. It has nothing to do with usage. It's just not efficient. So I don't really care. Sterling Shepard was at 41 or down to 41% snaps in this game. He did have a tug in this one. It was a red zone tug. I think it was the game winner overall. And then let's see, Tez Johnson was at 36% snaps, 4 for 4 for 59 overall in this game. Like so they right now, if Ibuka is playing a specific role within the offense, and a guy like Tez Johnson is going to be able to come on the field and give that speed dimension, the sacrificial X, the clear out routes, so Ibuka can go to other places. So when they want to run Ibuka in certain routes, they can put Ibuka into that. This is what I generally thought was going to happen with Mike Evans out. So you can see why the spike week for Ibuka, if they use them correctly, and they're just like, we're going to use them in the slot, we're going to use them, as the flanker and move him, and we're going to ISO him, and that the snap share is going to reflect that overall with all the guys that are out there. And now at this point with Ibuka, and I guess I lied, I do have something to say. Now at this point with Ibuka, with Mike Evans coming back and Chris Godwin eventually working into his role, you can maybe make the argument that Ibuka is only going to become more valuable because they can scheme him up to win for them, and then they have 2 other guys that are going to be the ancillary pieces that teams are going to take away. So like the argument that Ibuka value is going to go down when they get healthy is probably not, or just as valid as the argument is that when they get healthy, they can really start using Ibuka in certain ways because their other teams are going to have to actually take away like a healthy Godwin and a healthy Mike Evans down the line, and then you can just really start scheming things up for Ibuka. This is why fantasy football and real football don't mesh, is because good coaches can do those things where they're like, we really want to get this guy the football, and that means we're going to use other guys as the decoys, for lack of a better way to put it. Or they can do the other thing and they can go like, well, we're going to go out on a week-to-week basis and be like the Bills, and every week we're going to have you pick the way that you want to lose. Either of those are relevant options, and I kind of tend to think that like the way Ibuka is playing, that they are going to continue to just feed him, and they're going to use everybody else to scheme him up to where he needs to go. If you're interested in any of my rambling, all right, we'll start off with the Cardinals and the running back situation, and I'll just say this real quick. I don't care about real football. Whatever is going on like with like stuff that's out there. DeMercado was the passing down block from what I saw. Like if you haven't seen the highlights, he rips off like a 75-yard touchdown and he fumbles. The same thing screwing around before he goes through the end zone. And I bring this up because I saw some of the comments that are out there. I don't like to chase running backs that are 40-degree days. I like to chase like full bell cow league winners. And again, like this is the conversation I have with my co-managers on a year-to-year basis about like, are we playing for third place? And going after some of these guys is fine. Um, but you know, Michael Carter 58% snaps, 18 for 51, one touchdown, wasn't very efficient, and then another 5 for 5 for 22. So if you got your 15 points, like good for you on how you want to run that. Now the other thing as I bring this up with all this stuff is Bam Knight 16% snaps, 4 for 11. He tugs on his 2 red zone opportunities in this game, and then 1 for 13. And you got to wonder, as long as with all the stuff that's going on in the backfield and the fumble for DeMercado on his limited opportunities, and he's supposed to be the trustworthy back. And when you do stuff that's like not trustworthy, you're not going to be the trustworthy back for long. And then you're rolling out your Bam Knights. Michael Carter got the first touchdown. Bam Knight got the second touchdown in this game, and it just makes me go like, I just don't know how the backfield is going to shake out. So like that's why a guy like Michael Carter, he shouldn't have been available in any competitive leagues because of the speculation on what was going to happen with Trey Benson. All the usage overall between these 3 guys makes me go like, I really don't know how the backfield is going to shake out between these guys, because I could see like you're going to get like full bell cow Bam Knight at this point because of the inefficiency of Michael Carter, and then DeMercado not being the trustworthy back when he breaks off 75-yarder and doesn't do that. All right. Zay Jones was at 51% snaps. Greg Dortch was down to 7% snaps if you're chasing any of that stuff out there. And then Tip Riemann, our boy, he's done for the season with an ankle. Goes on IR. A little disappointed on that one. Let's see. Moving on to the Chargers. Running back room right now, like Omarion Hampton, the dreaded high ankle sprain, IR, 4 weeks. I went and I looked this up because I was listening to some of the talking heads on the YouTubes before, or in the background with some of this stuff. So Haskins was in the game first before Vidal when Hampton went down. Now I bring this up because on the same drive that Herbert threw the game-ending interception, Vidal did come in the game, because I wanted to make sure that I wrote this down correctly. Yes, all 3 red zone opportunities went to Vidal in this game, right? And then Haskins did 21% snaps. Vidal did 21% snaps. I guess technically, and I was looking for this, Vidal is still technically on the practice squad. So again, we may have to look for certain things now. I bring this up because if you're chasing that upside, the potential for spike weeks, Vidal is probably better at football, and he may get the receiving back work. The trustworthy back stuff may go to Haskins, but like even going back, and we'll scroll down to here, Haskins has never been efficient in the NFL as a running back. You see like 2.6 yards per carry. He may be the trustworthy back, and going back to like the fumble that he had last year for the Chargers, he may be the trustworthy back in this backfield. I don't know if he's ever going to give you anything more than like a Bam Knight fall in the end zone, red zone opportunity, something along those lines. And I bring this up with and I want to make sure I went and I wrote this down. Like I like to go chase for my Bills and my Rico Daddles because I can always roll out like a Charbonnet or a Kyle Juszczyk and hope that I get a touchdown. I don't know how much that like wins me anything. That's why I kind of tend to see what I want to see when it comes to some of these guys, because I want to see the possibility that I get my James Robinsons. I don't like, I got 15 points. Now I will tell you, go in and you can stare at your Kamini Vidal. I can tell you that if you've been new to the channel, the story of when I didn't block Wayne Gallman and then he had 2 receiving touchdowns and I lost the week because I'm like, I don't like that guy. So like that happens. Remember, like, what's a win worth to you? But at the same time, I do tend to chase the guy that has the possibility of having like 80% snaps, a majority of the red zone work and receiving work, because those guys like are special in a way that like me not being able to predict the chance of a guy falling in the end zone on like one red zone opportunity becomes like very difficult. All right, moving down here to the wide receivers. And where's it at? Keandre Lambert-Smith was at 12% snaps, which is consistent. And then Trey Harris jumps to 37% snaps. This is a little bit more dynasty stuff if you're into that. I don't have anything to say mostly about the wide receivers. Ladd did have like a punt return touchdown called back for a penalty if you're that. Now, tight ends, because we are tracking our boy Rondé Gatson. So I did want, when I was looking up Vidal and Haskins and their usage overall at the end of the game after the injury to Hampton, Gadsden's catch, the 14-yarder, was with Trey Lance in the game. but the snap share goes up to 54. So like that's just generally what I would be tracking on a little bit more. And then now we can start talking about like taking the gamble that you're gonna get a week where he spikes because of game flow and the game script. So the Dolphins, the Colts, yeah, those could happen. Maybe Minnesota down the line. Jacksonville may not be like necessarily bad. And then some of these games like Dallas will get like really. There's a possibility, and I'm not saying like quote me on this and hold me to it. There's a possibility that we could get multiple weeks where you're getting like top 10 Rondé Gaston seasons. And that's primarily if the snaps here. Now, again, with Dalton Kincaid, it's 54% snaps. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to go higher than that. It has to be the right snaps on the field at the right time. Now, the bigger problem with the Chargers at this point is, back-to-back games that they haven't necessarily looked very good. So, like, that's what I would say overall on that one. All right. Moving on to the Chiefs on Monday night, and I haven't really looked at the snap shares overall. So, like, don't hold against me at this point. So 63% snaps for Isaiah Pacheco, but, and here's your but, red zone opportunities, 33% for Kareem Hunt. He tugs on his 2 red zone opportunities. And then you get Brashad Smith, 9% snaps, 3 for 3 for 32 in the passing game, 1 for 4. So like, yeah, it's a mess. I was expecting maybe the snap shares to go up overall, and I did not go look at the red zone opportunities for Brashad Smith before I went live. But yeah, it's still there, tracking on these. I wouldn't touch any of those, and I don't think you're ever going to get more than potentially more than 1 red zone opportunity when it comes to Brashad Smith in the game overall. And then the other thing I was looking at with the snap share hunting for the Chiefs is Thornton, 45% snaps, 5 for 3 for 90. That was like early in the game because I was looking at the ticker. Overall, and I don't think I have much else of anything. 77% snaps, 9 for 6 for 42 for Worthy in this game. Not very impressed overall with the Chiefs once again out there. And like Patrick Mahomes is like willing himself to fantasy relevance because of the rushing touchdowns. And he is the number 1 running back when it comes to the Chiefs at this point. Don't have much else to say about them. Colts. Let's do going on to them right here. Most of this is going to be wide receiver room stuff because with Alec Pierce out with a concussion again, this was all disciplinary stuff because of the fumble last week and the holding penalty at this point. Like 9% snaps for AD Mitchell, and then they take the guy that they can trust, and Ashton Dulin, he goes 71% snaps overall in the game. So like that's about all I got to say about the Colts at this point overall. And then Redskins, with Jaden Daniel coming back in this game in a big bulky brace. So we'll just go right to the elephant in the room with your Bill shares. 47% snaps, 14 for 111, 2 touchdowns, 2 for 2 for 39, had a fumble, and more importantly, the fumble. This is the important stuff from a fantasy football perspective. He fumbled, and then they put him back in the game. And this was with them milking the clock. He went in and he had more red zone opportunities after fumble. So in this case, let's see, 2 red zone carries. He tugged on both of them. Red zone target in this game. That fumble lost. Now, C-Rod, if you're wondering about this going forward, 25% snaps, 5 for 7 in the game. 4 red zone carries went to him. All came after the fumble on the ice touchdown drive for C-Rod, the four red zone carries. So if you're wondering, but Bill was in the game before that overall. And then you're looking at Nichols being at 25% snaps overall in the game, like not significant usage. So he may continue to be the trustworthy passing down back overall in the offense. So your questions about like what should I do with Bill going forward at 47% snaps? I imagine he's going to be volatile, but he probably should just be rolled, especially at the price that you paid for him, which is probably like nothing to like a 7th round draft pick, something along those lines. Should be rolled because you're going to have the ability to have like these massive spike weeks. And again, that's why some of these guys are valuable, because you can take your sub 40 degree day and absorb that into your lineup, because everybody's going to have sub 40 degree days. It's going to be how many guys are going to have the ability to put up 26 points on the usage that they're going to be able to do. Like you're going to be able to roll your Corey Crosby Merits, your Bills out there against like your CMCs or your Bijans or something like that on a week-to-week basis, and have the ability to go knife fight with them overall. Now, if you get cute with them, you're going to miss the possibility of this, because like the overall usage, he is like one of the, and I did actually go watch more tape on Bill. Yeah, he is good at football, and what I thought of him being patient, with his vision and stuff like that. Like he generally just looks like he understands how to run the football, which means like when to get skinny and when to bounce it and stuff like that. Like those are the things that like why he was, I think, going into the game like the third overall ranked running back or graded running back. And you can see why he gets that when he plays, because he takes what's there, and he knows how to set guys up. So like, yeah, I would not get cute and sit him at this point, but you're gonna have to absorb probably like sub 40 degree days at this point. Scary Terry was out with a quad. I do in my notes have the dreaded label of league winner on Deebo Samuel relative to cost at this point. Luke McCaffrey was at 39% snaps. Jalen Lane was at 34% snap. Chris Moore right here doing the clear out routes. He was down 59% snaps. So I left that in from last week. I will take that out. I want to make sure 34% snaps right there. And with Luke McCaffrey, because I keep wanting to will this into existence, 39% snaps, 2 for 1 for 50. It does look like he's doing return duties on top of that, like 50-yarder on one of the opportunities he had. I don't see him factoring in. When everybody gets healthy, you're gonna have like probably like Brown playing the X, Deebo can play the Z, and you can move Scary Terry around. Like Scary Terry would end up playing the X most of the time because that's probably where he works best. But if you have Brown healthy with Deebo and Scary Terry, you can move these guys around. I just don't see like Luke McCaffrey being necessarily a thing this play, because he may end up being more of a slot only guy. I think he can play outside, but trying to say like will something into existence, even though I do think that like he is good if given the opportunity in the right coaching environment. All right, moving on to the Cowboys. And again, sometimes like chasing after the guys that are going to just be higher volume passing is a good way to win your league. It's also a good way to lose your league, and we'll talk about that with like Matt Stafford down the line. The dreaded league winner label going to Javonte Williams at this point. 77% snaps, 16 for 135, touchdown, 2 for 1 for 4, and another touchdown. Like when it comes down to that stuff, that's out there. Jaden Blue, he finally is active, 18% snaps. Didn't write down any red zone, so it must have been, didn't go to anybody that we weren't expecting it to. Right now, Jalen, let's see, wide receiver room. Where's Tolbert at? Right there. Jalen Tolbert, 77% snaps, 1 target. And that's why you get Flanoy going up to 57% snaps, 9 for 6 for 114. Now, I would not be surprised that you get the usage flop where like Flanoy ends up being the number 2 in the offense after this game. I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be chasing this stuff. Again, I don't know how much you're going to be able to predict anything out there. And then Turpin was also out in this game to kind of explain why some of that stuff was going on. Fingers crossed, I didn't even see that. We'll return. Like I don't care about that. And then right now, for the time being, yeah, like dreaded, like league winner Jake Ferguson, 2 more touchdown catches in the game. If you're wondering about that stuff, moving on to the Dolphins. Nothing on Achane or Gordon that I saw interesting. Even though like the offense like 10 for 16 bothers me, but again, like if he's basically the number 1 wide receiver that, well, I guess now he's number 2 wide receiver with Waddle going on. Let's see. Gordon's remains consistent at 25% snaps in the game, and then Jalen Wright, healthy scratch. When you're right, you're right. Let's see. Jalen Waddle, 9 for 6 for 110 and a touchdown in this game. Washington, and this is one of the things like I don't trying to get do hot takes to get views on YouTube. Malik Washington, 54% snap, 5 for 4, 0 yards in this game. He did have 2 red zone opportunity. -9 air yards compared to Waddle's 144 and 2 red zone, right? So like the breakdown of guys, like if he's not going to be used in the right context on the field, like, and I don't even have to watch tape. It's just I can go like hunt the box scores. It doesn't matter. You can't will certain things into existence. Nick Westbrook-Akine was the expectation, like Nick Westbrook, 71% snaps, 0 targets. Yeah, that's just how it's going to work sometimes. So you may get like a touchdown or some big splash play from Washington, right, Malik Washington, but like at this point, nothing is saying that's going to occur down the line if you're going to be chasing any of that stuff based off of usage. With Achane and now Waddle absorbing some of that role from Tyreek Hill, probably being better off that Tyreek Hill is out at this point. Like that's just how it's going to go. And then how consistent the offense is going to be. Now, Darren Waller, and this is important real quick to remember this number, 58 air yards. He did have a 34-yarder in the slot running a seam ball that he went up and got because they're not just making him a check down monster as a tight end. Just remember that. Now, 58% snaps, red zone touchdown. That's what you know. So hopefully they went out and you got him vacated targets and then red zone opportunities, and then there you go. All right, Eagles. First and foremost, so the game script, and they still play slow. 38 pass attempts for Jalen Hurts in the loss to the Broncos. Now, I start that off because we're speculating on Barkley right now and whatever estimated as limited Tuesday. Remember, like, never trust Thursday Night Football. 72% snaps, 6 for 30. He also went 3 for 358 and a touchdown in the game. Remember, 6 for 30 overall. So between the 38 pass attempts that Hurts had and then the 6 rush attempts that Barkley had, that's they're playing slow. That's the long and short. So I wonder if the rushing, the downside on the rushing volume for Barkley was because of the knee injury. That's kind of what I would think to begin with, instead of just saying like they magically went to 38 pass attempts in a game overall. All right, don't have a lot to say about the wide receivers. If you're wondering about that, I think that's all I have written down for the Eagles. Falcons were on bye. I don't have anything to really say about them. I did go and dumpster dive on potential injuries and stuff like that. Moving on to the Giants. Let's just go right over the Falcons. Oh, with Jackson Dart. So I did see that, yeah, it's full practice day. So yesterday, I guess he was limited with that hamstring. Today, he's full practice now. Again, never trust Thursday Night Football. I will likely be rolling my Jackson Dart shares this week because of that rushing floor that he's going to give me. And then you're going to be dealing with the turnovers. Again, he had 3 turnovers this last game. And this is a bad matchup on Thursday night. But again, there's going to be limited amounts of guys that, because of the rushing work and the theoretical, goal line fullback stuff, that are going to have the ability to go out there and spike out there. So, like, we could play if buts and maybes. And again, your scoring settings may be different than mine. But, I usually do like, I think it's -2 points per turnover in this game. So you could add an additional, 6 points to your box score with Jackson Dart. Likely going to have turnovers all seasons long, but you also could have multiple rushing touchdowns and multiple passing touchdowns, like your Josh Allen lights out there. So, like, if you get cute and you bench him, but you also have to realize that you also have the possibility of having those Justin Fields week where, he give you 27 one week and then the next week 5, and it's really not going to have anything to do with matchup. Just that's how it functions sometimes. Now, but again, I will also always say, like, never trust Thursday Night Football when it comes down to that. Scatterboo in this game, and I'll talk about with him, 68% snaps, did play after the fumble, got all the red zone. That's all I got to know on that one. But, and here's your but, Tyrone Tracy will return on Thursday night. I didn't even see that from yesterday with that shoulder. So this is going to get, like, really interesting to see, like, overall usage. I imagine, and I did see, like, the Cam Scatterboo highlight where he's basically a fullback and blew up the defensive end and then kind of like clowned on him afterwards. That was kind of hilarious. So overall breakdown, I'm going to imagine with these guys is you're looking at probably inline Scatterboo. I don't know if the snap share will necessarily change with him. I'm going to say like 50 to 70% snaps, somewhere along those lines. And again, because they can line up multiple running backs at the same time, especially with Jackson Dart, snap share may not matter as much as usage. So if he's getting all the red zone and he's getting receiving work, it may not matter how much snap share he loses overall, because your Devin Singletary may just stay in that, like, trustworthy dirty work back role overall that he has in the game. Now, Tyrone Tracy, if he's active and he's playing and stuff like that, may get more design stuff, and it may be in the design passing work role, which that would end up hurting Scatterboo more than anything else. Now, if Scatterboo is going to get the red zone stuff, yeah, that's fine. And then the thing that would hurt him is the receiving stuff overall. So I think he'll stay with the red zone role. I think that the receiving work will go down overall, either because he's not going to be on the field because of Trace or Devin Singletary, or Tracy's going to get design passing work. That's how I would predict that overall. Wide receivers right now, Slayton hamstring, did not practice on Tuesday. That's just as of me clicking on this. You're looking at Hyatt. Did get the uptick to 47% snaps, but you also got undrafted, I think 7th round, or no, he couldn't be undrafted in 7th round at the same time. He's undrafted, Bo Collins. He did jump all the way up to 38% snaps. If you're wondering, trying to figure out, like, Wandale is at 95% snaps, trying to figure out who the other guys are going to be, and I could definitely see they're going to be running a lot of two tight ends and a lot of two running backs in this thing. So like, who's going to be the other guy? Wandale and Hyatt, I'm going to guess, but like Collins is probably going to get like maybe 50% snaps. I could see that going on in the game. Not that you care about Bellinger. There's my boy, 52% snaps, 4 for 4, 52 in the game overall. And I did write down he did have a red zone opportunity in this one. And then there's Theo Johnson, 82% snaps, 7 for 6 for 33 and 2 touchdowns. That's why, like, from a chasing the dragon perspective, I brought up Theo Johnson is with those wide receivers, the multiple running backs, like some of these sets that would be primarily not traditional to the rest of the, unorthodox to the rest of the NFL, that you're going to get a lot of interesting personnel groupings. And then Theo Johnson is going to end up being the number one overall. The quote unquote alpha will end up being Theo Johnson. That's why I would say I would take advantage of that from a chasing the dragon perspective over anything else, especially if Slayton's going to be out. Wandale is going to have a particular role in the offense, and then you're going to have like Hyatt or Collins. And I don't know anything about Collins at this point because I don't care. But Hyatt would be more of the vertical route guy. Wandale would work on his. You could make the argument that you're going to get like seam ripper design passing play like Theo Johnson based off of all that, and highly athletic blocking tight end, yada yada. Yeah, I would like that, and I would be a little bit aggressive on that if I'm missed out on my Darren Waller or something like that with some of the guys out there. The other one that I did see, and this is why it gets interesting, camp hype guy Thomas Fedone, he was actually active in this game. So now we can start if they're going to be running some of these like really interesting type of sets that are going to be out there with like multiple tight ends, and Fedone like would be another guy that I could see being a little bit vertical with the offense. All right, moving on to the Jaguars, and I did watch the highlight of Trevor Lawrence winning the football game by falling down. Overall, then 2 rushing touchdowns. Like some of these guys with the deceptive nimbly bimbly are going to be able to get you home sometimes. ETN 59% snaps, 12 for 49, 4 for 3 for 9 in this game. I didn't see any red zone opportunities going to anybody else. 21% snaps for Tootin in this game overall, so I didn't write down anything that was really interesting to me. And then 22% snaps for LaQuint Allen overall. And then wide receivers, and we'll just get Parker Washington, 26% snaps, did get a receiving touchdown overall. Some guys are good at football and they just have bad coaching. And let's see. Brian Thomas, 93% snaps, 6 for 4 for 80. And then Travis Hunter, I did see a vertical target with him, 3 for 3 for 64 in this game. If you're wondering about that, and I think Brown was also active at 66% snaps. Tight end room, Brent Strange goes on IR with a chest injury, quadriceps. So I did see last night he got knocked out with a chest. So it does say like quadriceps, whatever that is. And next four weeks, so it's not season ending, 38% snaps. And I probably would not be chasing this, but I'm going to imagine, Hunter Long at 60% snaps was the guy who came in after that. All right. So I got to remove. I have wild ending to Bucks, so I did not remove that from my notes. And then Justin Fields, I have concussion, so I must not have looked at that. And the other thing, with your Justin Fields shares, to talk about this, again, the limited amount of guys that are going to be able to go out there and put out some of these spike weeks. So you're playing with fire, but are you playing to win the week, or are you playing to get a 40-degree day? So going after some of these guys that have these higher upsides, like your Justin Fields being able to do like two passing touchdowns, like 282 and 7 for 26 overall in the game, there's only going to be a limited amount of guys that have the ability to go out there and give you like your puncher's chance. So if you're going after like some of these guys that are out there, it's fine if I'm built the right way, I can absorb that to get like a 10 to 15 point outcome relative to some of the other guys that I have to take my swings, and that means sometimes I got to miss. Now, Brees in this game, he did get all the red zone at 62% snaps. So that was one of the things I was a little bit worried about, that it would not go all to him. He did get it in the 40% snaps for Isaiah Davis in this one overall. Mason Taylor, remember, 58 air yards for Darren Waller right here. 84% snaps, 12 for 9 for 67. 62 air yards in this game on 12 targets compared to 5 targets for Darren Waller, who did 58. Now, 2 red zone opportunity went to Mason Taylor. So, am I saying I'm not interested in Mason Taylor? No. What I'm saying is probably not going to be anything more than a replaceable tight end one. Unless you're getting that type of usage, and again, design usage and vertical usage and all that stuff out of Mason Taylor, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, and the offense is going to be inconsistent on top of that. I'm not saying don't. I'm saying you've missed on everybody else, and this is maybe like your last chance to go get that guy. Mason Taylor versus Theo Johnson. I probably would want Theo Johnson in that offense with the Giants, because now I can speculate on Theo Johnson being the number one relative to Mason Taylor. We know Mason Taylor is at best the number two. Garrett Wilson's gonna be number one, dreaded league winner tag relative to cost. We could maybe talk about that. Solid wide receiver too, but that's what I would say with like your Mason Taylor. Like I would take the swing on the upside that I get some, like, because I would take advantage of the Malik Neighbors injury. You know, that's how I would view it. I will miss on guys trying to swing for the biggest outcome, because I don't like the guys that can't win me. Again, I've talked about like the little interesting good teams versus like trying to put together a juggernaut team. And if I miss on the juggernaut team, I don't make playoffs. But if I hit on the juggernaut team, I walk away with my league. And I'm in the business of winning. I've won enough times that like third place doesn't mean anything. Isaac Tisla, 34% snaps. He did tug on that, and one of the reasons why I bring that up is Khalif Raymond knocked out with a neck, so you could move further and further towards like Tisla moving into that wide receiver 3 range, but it doesn't really matter. They can't support all the guys that they have. 82% snaps, 1 for 9. I did see that the coach came out and was really praising Jamo's blocking ability in the game. They don't care about your fantasy lineup. The guy that got home like this week is Laporta. 94% set, 6 for 5 for 92 and a touchdown. So like, there's only so many touchdowns. In my main money league, part of the reason like I was able to win is the guy, because he had the injury to Chuba, and I blocked him with Rico and then rolled Rico. I bring this up is because he ended up rolling Laporta and JMO in the same game. Now, why is this important from a fantasy football? You have to get certain outcomes to games where both guys end up having very good weeks, or even if you have one guy gets the spike week, the other guy can't. Now, am I saying don't roll multiple guys in offenses? No, I'm not. But when we're rolling some of the bottom guys at our bench, like, matchups become important, and then trying to take advantage of. Remember, the fantasy holy grail is a great player attached to an okay offense where he could just be an opportunity funnel. And if you're rolling out multiple guys in certain offenses, you have to get those weeks where it's like, well, they're both projected to get into those like 40-40, or the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. And I wouldn't have predicted that game, because I would have thought like the Seahawks would have dragged that game into the dirt, and Sam Darnold wouldn't have thrown 4 touchdown passes overall. All right. And then the other a little interesting thing to me, like 73% stat Brock Wright in the game. So it kind of gives you an idea. He's a blocking tight end, how the game went. Now, Packers do have a little bit of notes when we go over to, where's he at? Christian Watson, if I can find him down there at the bottom. Christian Watson, practice window is open at this point, like 21 days to figure out if they're going to bring him back or not. And we're imagining that he's going to come back at this point. Like, he did look ahead of schedule in the offseason overall. And then the other one that I would talk about, like coming out of the bye with Matthew Golden, if he's available, like I don't know how much I'd be like really expecting that you're going to get league winner. You may get massive spike weeks out of him that are somewhat non-predictive, or they could be predictive one way or the other. I don't know if you're going to get all that going together, because Christian Watson may end up running those vertical routes that may open up Matthew Golden. Romeo Doubs, this is part of the problem. Romeo Doubs will remain red zone target guy. So Tucker Kraft is still the guy that I want to own in the offense. And then all this has to occur. So if Golden's available on your wire, like, I probably wouldn't care at this point. That's the long and short of what I'm saying. I could also see if you're holding Golden, and because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and you want to try and get like the Bengals, yeah, I could see it happening. Also, if you're wondering about like my thoughts on that, but I just don't. Everything, if he was going to take advantage of the situation, it would have been before Christian Watson came back. And at this point, it does appear that Romeo Doubs is going to be the guy that we thought he was going to be. So that means like Matthew Golden's not going to get the red zone opportunities when it comes to that. And he's not going to become the opportunity funnel attached to the offense, which is the long and short of that. All right. Panthers in this one. So you got Chuba Hubbard being out. And I did already see that Chuba Hubbard is expected. It says labeled day to day. Already saw that like he is expected to miss another week. Now, again, that's just like Twitter ramblings. It doesn't mean that it means anything. It's just like, my uncle's brother told me this, and that's how I would tend to like look at some of these news. But if it costs me nothing to speculate on that, I would tend to look in that direction. That's why I tend to pay attention to some of that stuff, because it's just like I'm gonna stash that guy on the bottom of my bench for a day so I can be wrong, because after waivers it costs me nothing overall. And then Rico Dowdle in this one, 67% snaps, 23 for 206, a touchdown, 4 for 3 for 28. And then you also have Trevor Etienne up to 20% snaps, 4 for 22, and then 1 for 1 for 7 in this game. Overall, scrolling down with Tet, and the one thing I'll say, like 90% snaps, 8 for 6 for 73. Eventually, he's going to score a touchdown, because there's too much volume for him not to eventually score a touchdown overall in this one. And I didn't even write down any red zone opportunity for him, so I must not have been interested. Tight end room, Tommy Tremble 76% snaps, and then Mitchell Evans was up to or down to 37% snaps. Did have a red zone opportunity, and he tugged on it. Pats, and I gotta remove that. It says close one with Steelers, because that didn't happen. It was a close one with the Bills. And this one, let's see. Ramondre did fumble again early in the game, but it didn't matter, because they gave him 2 red zone opportunities. He tugged on both of those in this game. Inefficient, 7 for 14, 2 for 2 for 13. The other one is Antonio Gibson, down for the year with an ACL, 15% snaps in this one overall also. So we did get Henderson up to 50% snaps, 6 for 24, 3 for 2 for 3. And I still would tend to say that like this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint overall when it comes to how the offense is going to function, and then getting the right type of opportunity for Henderson. But the injury to Gibson would still trend to track in the right direction. The Ramondre continuing to get like valuable touches after another fumble, that bothers me. If you're wondering about like my expectation of where that's going to go. Now, Diggs, on the other hand, down to 50% snaps, 12 for 10 for 146 going forward. So like you do you when it comes to that. And I don't have anything written down when it comes to the rest of the snap shares for the Patriots wide receivers, so I probably don't care about any of that stuff. Raiders blown out by the Colts, so nothing, because Genti snaps were down and Mostert's was up, but again they got blown out, so like that doesn't mean anything to me overall when it comes to that. Like 7 for 5 for 42, the passing game is more interesting to me. With Bowers and Mayer, and I'll bring this up. So nothing on the wide receivers. Bowers is out right now with that knee, considered week to week, whatever that means. Mayer is out with a concussion right now. And so, like, if you're really in that spot and you want to know about, like, the Raiders tight ends, 56% snaps, Ian Thomas. He was supposed to be one of those guys that was supposed to always break out with the Panthers, and it never happened. And then they went out and they brought up Albert O from the practice, or from their practice squad. It says right there, back to practice squad. 46% snaps, 6 for 5 for 36. So like if you're dumpster diving, maybe that's the guy at this point. If Bauer and Mayer are out, I wouldn't touch anything attached to the Raiders. All right, Rams. Never trust Thursday Night Football. I was just gonna say it again. I rolled the Rams defense and I got -2 going into the week. So let's see. Matt Stafford, and when you're wrong, you're wrong. And if he's going to continue just to throw touchdown passes, and we can get like good script games, because like maybe even Baltimore, it does look like Lamar Jackson is trending in the wrong direction. Jacksonville down the line, you can start like trying to matchup shop. Tampa Bay, Carolina maybe, Detroit definitely, Falcons maybe, that turn into like just games that we can predict multiple touchdown passes for Matthew Stafford. And again, like sometimes it's just jumping on that if it's available, and then riding that until the wheels fall off. Now, I will say Blake Corum, I did watch this. So he dropped the pitch, 9% snaps, and then they went full bell cow with Kyron Williams, 91% snaps, 14 for 65, 10 for 8 for 66, 2 receiving touchdowns. And he did fumble again, and then he also got stuffed on a 4th down in overtime. So like, sometimes this is how coaches are going to be. Like one guy drops a pitch and he doesn't play, and the other guy like fumbles, and they put the game in his hands again. Like, this is how it's going to go. Nothing else to say about like Puka or Devontae. And then I don't really care about the tight ends with Higbee being out. The one caveat that I would say to this, Parkinson knocked out like with a concussion. And then you got Dennis Allen, not surprising, the guy at 60% snaps. Second round draft pick, Terrence Ferguson, 6% snaps in the game, and then it says like, oh, a potential for expanded role. They just may be out of other guys to be rolling out there at this point, and all they can do is give Terrence Ferguson a shot. But if it's not a very good sign when they have all these guys going down and all he can manage is 6% snaps in the game. That's what I'll say. All right, Ravens, they got blown out by, let's see, by the Texans in this game. And then overall usage, so like none of it. One of where's he at? Cooper Rush's interceptions was Bateman gave up on the play, and yeah, that's one of his interceptions. But he did have 3 on the day overall. To give an idea how the offense is going to function, 65% snaps for Derrick Henry. I don't know when the last time he's been up to 65 snaps. 74% snaps, 65% snaps, 70% end of last year. So he jumps all the way up to 65% snaps in this game. So that kind of gives you an idea that they're just going to run the football with him in the game. And then nothing on anybody else I don't really care about. Tight ends likely remain consistent at 53% snaps relative to 46 last week. And then Andrews at 58% snaps, but it doesn't matter if they can't get the football to them. And then Kohler right there, 47. So they're back to that 3-headed monster at tight end, if you're wondering about all that stuff. All right, Saints, and the Saints are surprising me as much as I talk poorly on them. So, like, as much as Spencer Rattler has a punchable face, I don't have a lot to say about, like, now I don't want to be rolling defenses against them. They look serviceable, which is all you can say about them, when it comes down to the on a week-to-week basis, trying to take advantage of them. And then the other thing is, like, outside of why I would probably be speculating on Kendre Miller is if the offense can be conservative enough to give the right opportunities to Miller down the line, then I'm really, really interested, because they might be able to support a league-winning guy on the not good side of offenses. And generally speaking, I want to stay away from like not good offenses. I would rather be on like good offenses, the side of the line. But at this point, like, maybe we could talk about the Saints being good enough that we could get a league winner out of Kendre Miller if we get the trade of Alvin Kamara down the line. So, like, workload at risk, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm waiting on the trade. Now, part of the reason why I bring this up about that trade is when you start seeing those usage flops, it may be that they're going like, well, what's it going to look like if we give the rock to Kendre Miller without Alvin Kamara? And that's part of the reason, like, why we could track our Trey McBride's a couple years ago. It was already happening before the trade of Ertz to the Redskins. All right. And then besides laughing at Chris Olave's 11 targets and like ridiculously low air yards. All right. And then the other thing from a tight end perspective, not named Juwan Johnson. Again, like, chasing some of these guys that'll break your heart. Taysom Hill, he's back 14% snaps, and then Forster Moreau is also back 35% snaps in this one overall. All right, Seahawks, moving on to running backs. So if you're playing, which guy's the guy to play on a week-to-week basis? Kenneth Walker, 44% snaps. 2 red zone opportunity went to him. 3 went to Zach Charbonnet. And I have Zach Charbonnet in my main money league, and I keep joking about the fact that, like, we could just roll him out and get a rushing touchdown from him on a week-to-week basis if we want that 40-degree day. He does tug on one of his red zone opportunities in this one, 56% snaps. And then Horton, I did write down his snap share was at 49% snaps in this game. Did have another touchdown to go along with it. And then JSN league winner. So, like, the difference... Would I rather have, like, before the trade or before Joe Flacco? I would have rather had, like, JSN. So, like, that would have been the time to do, like, JSN for, like, Jamar Chase, like, straight up, if someone will take that. I don't know if anybody would take that. You probably have to throw a bag of chips in on top of that. Like, now, with the Flacco trade, you probably could do, like, JSN for Jamar Chase, like, straight up. And if you want to play that game, like, play that game. And I could see that being, I could make the argument for it both ways if you want to do that, just to get out from underneath that. With Flacco coming in, you may have enough to get either guy to move on what's going on. So that I break that down, because now you just talk about, like, opportunity funnel attached to an okay offense. That's what we want from fantasy football perspective overall. Now, I think on a week-to-week basis, Jamar Chase, regardless, is always going to have a higher ceiling than JSN. Shouldn't have to say that, but I will. AJ Barner, 80% snaps, 7 for 7 for 53, 2 touchdowns in this one on 3 red zone opportunities. I didn't write down any air yards. I shouldn't have to on 53 receiving yards on 7 targets overall. And Arroyo was down to 43% snaps in this game. So like magically getting our double tight ends that are fantasy relevant, not going to happen again overall. Steelers do have a little bit of stuff on the Steelers right now. So running back room, Jalen Warren, around positive, but whatever that means. That was 11 hours ago. That's not what I'm going to talk about. So the expectation with 21% snaps for Caleb Johnson, that will go up coming out of the bye week. That they some way, shape, or form, he will have a role in the offense. It just becomes like how much everybody gets eaten into. So Kenneth Gainwell, if he's available, I'm still, and I haven't stashed him already, something like that. You're waiting on the news on Jalen Warren for full bell count, but I would imagine one way, doesn't matter, like if all of them are healthy or only Kenneth Gainwell is or Jalen Warren is out and Kenneth Gainwell is there. Caleb Johnson, I imagine the snaps are going to go up. That's this coming out of the bye. I would be, if it's not going to be a very good sign from a dynasty perspective, if Caleb Johnson comes out of the bye and his snaps go down. It should remain about 21% snaps regardless, if not like a slight uptick on top of that. Now, the other guy, and I did look at this, not that anybody cares, limited to start the week 13 hours ago when it comes to Calvin Austin in his shoulder. Don't really care about that, but just paying attention to that. Darnell Washington, I'm going to say this, the 91% of snaps goes down, but it did make me go look up Pat Freiermuth. And I guess the way his contract is set up, like, yeah, they can get out from underneath Pat Freiermuth. But the bigger elephant in the room on this one would be Arthur Smith just sucking at football. That's how I would see that. So it may not matter. It just may be like me looking at numbers overall. Texans, they blow out the Ravens in this one. 4 touchdown passes for CJ Stroud. Outside of the Ravens are so bad, I don't know how you would have predicted that because it wasn't because it was going to turn into a shootout, if you're wondering about that stuff. Nick Chubb, he is at 34% snaps, 11 for 61 in this game. 2 red zone opportunities I have written down. Woody Marks on his 39% snaps. He did have 2 red zone opportunities that I have written down also in this one. This is where it gets fun. This is the fun part for if you're wondering about what happened to my Woody Marks share. So Dameon Pierce, he was active at 23% of snaps. Now remember, he says gets garbage time snaps. Remember, they blew them out. Now I bring up Dameon Pierce being active. They had 5 active running backs in this game. So Dare, who was the passing down back until he fumbled, he's down to 4% snaps in the game, right? Now, I bring all this up because our boy, British Brooks, who is the special teams guy, he was active in this game. He did 16% snaps. He did 2 for 15. Now, you may say, well, yeah, if Dameon Pierce got garbage time touches, then special teams guy British Brooks got... No. British Brooks got a carry on the opening drive of the game. So this is more stuff telling me like, what are you doing, coaches? It doesn't seem like you know what's going on if you're wondering about all that stuff. Don't care about the snap shares of the wide receivers because of the blowout in this one. Let's be moving down to the Titans. Some fun stuff here. Primarily, I don't know why everybody's been bringing up like Alec Minor 72% snaps. So magical injury from or mystery injury from Calvin Ridley in this game. 66% snaps, 10 for 5 for 113 in the game. I did write down air yards, in this game. I did not write down air yards. I just wrote this one. So 66% snap, 10 for 5 for 131. Like, everybody expecting that you're going to get like some type of spike week out of ALA. Like the spike week that was being tracked to occur was Calvin Ridley the whole time, even with that like mystery injury that he had overall. Where's he at? Tajay Spears coming back off the IR, 25% snaps in this game. And then the other one, I don't even know if he's still with them. So Burks was released from the IR, and he can sign with anybody else with that collarbone if you're tracking former first-round busts overall. Now, the other thing when it comes to the Titans, Chig, 63% snaps, 5 for 4 for 48. And then the interesting thing, and this is one of the things that we kind of knew was going to happen from the offseason, 66% snaps for Gunnar Helm, 5 for 4 for 34 in this game also, and did get a red zone opportunity. So like that usage flop is going to happen. And why it makes it a little bit more interesting is Calvin Ridley is going to be the number one for the Titans. And I could see Cam Ward, because I am interested in Cam Ward, because he's one of those guys that I was like very wishy-washy when it came to like, do I think he's good or bad at football? And I am slowly but surely thinking that like if he gets the right coaches, he's going to be good at football. Now, so by the end of the year, like the Titans may not be horrible. And we can start tracking on other guys being valuable for the Titans. So if Ridley's the number one and A.O. Minor is not progressing in any way, shape, or form, and now we're getting a usage flop at tight end and Gunnar Helm's going to be the guy, yeah, then we can start talking about like tight ends being relevant, especially like the number two in an offense. So there is that possibility down the line. And then I think we're almost done when it comes to the Vikings. So first and foremost, like J.J. McCarthy, extensive work during bye week, whatever that means. The possibility that we're going to get any more fun out of the Vikings toys may be at an end when JJ McCarthy comes back. And it does look like everything is trending towards him coming back at this point. So like, you do you when it comes to if you want to be selling your Jordan Masons and your Justin Jeffersons and your Jordan Addisons, probably already been dropping your Hawks at this point down the line. So with where is he at? Jordan Mason in this one, 66% up, 13 for 52, touchdown, 4 for 4 for whatever in this game. And then Xavier Scott was at 22% snaps, 5 for 18. So any possibility that he was going to eat more in Jordan Mason did not occur in this game. And then Jordan Addison, like not a real football channel, I guess he got in trouble for something, and then he went and scored the game winner. Adam Thielen, 22% snaps was his consistent, and then Jalen Naylor at 65% snaps. This is like just because I like Jalen Naylor as a player that I track stuff like that. And then Hawk was at 93% snaps that I have written down in the game, or actually that's from last week, so he's at 85% snaps, relatively consistent. All this will go out the window as soon as JJ McCarthy comes back, unless something magically happens with all that stuff. So anyway, that's about all I got for your after waivers this week. If you're wondering about some of the stuff that's going on, and yeah, I'll be back when I'm back.